Hey guys, yes, Hamza, you are the first. Say you can hear me if you can hear me. You know the drill. Let me know. Of course, I get messages just as I start my live stream. I'm going to wait for a few people to come on, see how many people show up. Let me know if you can hear me by writing in the text in the comments. Can you hear me? All right. How many people are showing up? 8, 15. Good, good, good. Thanks for joining. I felt inspired today to do a live stream. I shouldn't because I got a ton of work to do, but we will do this live stream. Greetings, greetings, loud and clear. Good. Sup? How you guys doing? Hope everybody is well. Good morning, good morning. Yeah, what time is it now? It's getting late in Europe. Good, good, good. Fantastic. How we doing? So when we get to about 75, 100 people, I will jump into the subject, and then we'll do Eric Chapman. Bonjour, j'espère que tout ça va avec toi. Merci. SpaceX just did the same comm check. How's Stef today? Stef's pretty good. I'm cheating on my diet today. I got M&Ms. Very rare I eat chocolate. Very rare, very rare. So I figured, what else? Why not? There we go. Inspirations come at the worst times. There. I am in. Exactly. Exactly. From Australia. Well. I appreciate that, Jay. Thank you. All right. How are we doing? 40 people. I'll wait for a few more people to get on. And then, very good. Is this front end or back end? It applies to any framework, really. It applies to any framework. There's 3 basic rules to consider. And then you should be well equipped to decide whether or not to use frameworks. How are we doing? So what I'm going to do is I'll just jump into it, and then I'll do a little bit of Q&A. All right, so choosing when to use a web framework. This applies to both front end or back end, whether you're using a React or a Vue or Angular for front end, or a back end, whether you use Django or Flask or the .NET framework or Python, I said Django, Laravel in the PHP world, etc., Node, Express. When do you use a framework? What are the choices you should be considering when making that choice? So, number one, the complexity of the project is the first thing you want to look at. The more complex the project that you're building, the more likely you should use a framework. Why? Because the framework is going to give you a tested and verified structure that will allow you to ramp up your project very quickly. So the first question that comes to my mind is, well, why don't you just use a framework all the time? Well, sometimes if you're doing very simple projects, a framework may be overkill. Let me underline that, may be overkill. But basically, rule number 1 tells you, if you got a complex project, use a framework, because a framework is going to provide a structure that ultimately is going to make for a more cleaner, a solid code base that you can build upon. Number 2, the more developers that you have working on a project, the more likely you're going to need and should use a framework. Why? Because a framework is going to help you, again, by providing a structure. The structure will make it easier for you to onboard people. So let me give you an example. Let's say you're building something that's pretty complex front end with React. Because you're using React, you'll be able to go out there and say, hey, we're looking for React developers, which will make it easier for you to find React people who can get up to speed with your project. One of the biggest costs in software is getting people up to speed with the project that you're building. So if you're using a framework that's well known and popular, you'll be able to source out new developers much more quickly. You'll be able to get developers up to speed in terms of your code base much more quickly if you're using a framework. So for example, if you're using Django or on the back end, or you're using PHP Laravel, people who use Laravel and people who use Django, people who use, I don't know, Spring Boot to Spring, they know where things are supposed to be in a Spring app, in a Laravel app, in a Django app. So to get them on board, be pretty simple. So StudioWeb is based on PHP Laravel. If I wanted to get people to help new developers in there, I would just have to say, hey, we have a Laravel-based app. We're looking for Laravel developers. Somebody who's used Laravel quite a bit will know basically how the app is structured because I'm using Laravel. So that's huge, right? Because you can get up to speed quickly. Another thing that the framework will do is it will provide a set of rules, if you will, best practices, again, which will help set a better standard in terms of the quality of the code. So that's another reason why you want to use a framework. And the third reason to determine using a framework is the particular needs of a project. So you have a project that has to do X, Y, and Z. Does the framework you are thinking of implementing, does it help with that? Does it have components in the framework that speed up the development process for you? If the answer is yes, then you want to use that, because remember, the top 3 rules of coding: reuse, reuse, reuse. You want to reuse code that's been vetted, it's been used by other developers, because it's just going to be cleaner code. The last thing I like to do, the last thing I want to do, is write code from scratch. It's the worst thing you can possibly do, because the more code, original code that you write from scratch, the more prone to bugs there are. So if I can leverage a framework, whether it be front end or back end, and save myself a lot of time and headache by it providing me a logical framework that has been vetted and been refined by many, many developers over time, my piece of software in the end will be better. So you're going to have a much more solid code base to begin with. So to recap, when should you use a web framework? Well, number one, when there's enough of a complexity in the project that would require some sort of framework to make things work. This is a judgment call. So what I always suggest to people, after you learn your fundamentals in development, you should pick one framework for the back end, if you're going to do back end, and one framework for the front end, if you're going to do front end, just so you get to know it fairly well, so you understand what it can do, what it can provide. So when you step into a project, you'll have that tool that you can leverage. You don't have to learn every framework, because all these frameworks are very similar to each other. They each have their pros and the cons. But for example, once you've learned Python Django, you have a pretty good idea how Ruby on Rails works, how Express.js works. You have a pretty good idea how PHP Laravel works, etc. So you don't need to learn every single framework out there. Just pick one or two that make sense based on where you happen to live, the type of work you want to do, etc., etc. I've covered this in other videos, and you'll be ready to go. So the second reason, to recap, is that the more developers you have involved in a project, the more likely you're going to need a framework, because A, if you use a standard framework that people understand, it'll be easier for you to get people up to speed in your application. And B, a lot of these frameworks will allow you to more easily separate jobs out to various people. So you can have somebody who just works on the view code, somebody who just works on the middle layer, somebody who just works on the data access layers, etc., etc., etc. So that's another advantage of the framework. The final advantage is, the final reason, rather, when you use a framework is depending on the needs of the project. The project demands a framework, because the framework provides certain tools, certain libraries, certain capabilities, certain functionality that you need for your project. Then the framework makes perfect sense to leverage at that time. We don't want to add too much when we don't need it, but at the same time, we don't want to be rewriting code that's already been written 1,000 times or is already expressed, if you will, in a framework. So there you have it. Wow, I got this done under 10 minutes. Fantastic. So that's my brief overview of when to use a web framework. This applies to both back end and front end. Any questions? We'll see what we got here. Richard says, hello, this is perfect time. I'm actually looking for a new Node.js framework for an app I'll be developing just as a hobby. So there you go. Stream quality has automatically been lowered. So if we're getting a stream quality issue, my apologies, guys. Should we use a PHP framework if the performance is primary? I think that you're going to get similar performance across the board, generally speaking, regardless of the underlying stack that you use. PHP, though, is much more efficient in terms of memory use, footprint than Ruby or Python, that's for sure. Stef est de retour. Je suis ici. Oui, vraiment. From the Netherlands. How are you? All right. Any questions? Now's the time. JR Bullet says, yes. Yay, I just fixed a bug in Vue.js. Damn, it took me 2 days. Congratulations. I know how that is. That's cool. Buy yourself a coffee. Is Flask the Ruby of frameworks? Deployment times would suck without backend framework. Indeed, yeah. Rob Burns is not a fan of frameworks. That's interesting. All right. Let's see a guy from Sweden here. Hello from Sweden. Thank you for your content studying programming and AI. Your videos help a lot. I'm glad I could help. Thanks for watching. Switzerland. My nonprofit I work with was on the news. Hey, that's cool. Congratulations. Matthew said, good Zoom today. Glad you liked it. Yeah, I thought that was a good question that came up with the new dude. And so I decided to cover it here a little bit more structured. Well, different point of view anyway. All right, so how are we doing? 97. Small group today. Any questions? Any questions before we go? Okay, what's we got here? Hello from Bosnia. Unrelated, looking to switch career to dev. I thought of writing a blog about tech. I am a teacher by trade, so I think I can convey my knowledge to others well. Thoughts or ideas? Yeah, if you're a teacher and educator, I come from a family of teachers, my father, aunts, uncles, cousins, etc. And I teach, of course. Your advantage could be in the bridge between the devs and the suits, where you're able to speak to the suits, the decision makers, the business people, find out what they need, talk to the devs, and create that communication between the total nerds and the business people. That's a highly regarded position. First, you have to learn development, of course, and so that you can speak to people in both worlds, but your teaching skill will help you to break down some of that complexity. Why is ASP.NET Core not in your sentences? I don't know. I guess they should be. It's a viable product. I have not looked at. I play with .NET. I wrote some simple apps years ago on .NET, but I'm not up to. I'm not up to date with what's going on there at this point. How long have you been playing drums? Wow. A long time. I would say, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years. Good question. Why frameworks exist? I've always preferred vanilla.js. Tell me I am wrong. Depends on what you're doing. A framework would just allow you to speed up the development process, that's all. a good framework will take care of a lot of the boilerplate code, so you don't have to do it. And that's it. That's one of the main reasons. I gave you the reasons there, but they're useful. Don't discount them. Bonjour, what do you think about freelance websites like Fiverr? Yeah, I think like any community, you probably have to get yourself into it, develop some reputation, then you can start, your salaries will start low, but will start going up high once you get good at what you do. Looks like I got skipped. Is it okay to ask again? Okay, let's see where we go. I'm getting back into programming, and next up, I want to build some projects. Should I use frameworks and not reinvent things like auth, etc., or should I make these by hand for now? Use frameworks. Use frameworks. Don't, I said in my Zoom meeting today, don't be looking for things to do or build or learn. There's plenty of stuff to build, even if you use frameworks. So definitely use frameworks, because if you're looking to get a job, they're going to expect you to use frameworks too, most of the time. Can you give a quick info about middleware? What info would you want to know? So I know what string, int, boolean are, etc. I know the basic concepts. I struggle with data structures and abstraction. Well, write code now. If you can write functions and methods, you know flow control, iteration. You understand object orientation. You understand separation of concerns. Then it's time to actually go out there and start building real things. You really learn and understand this stuff once you actually start building. Okay. Edward Gonzalez says, greetings from California. Greetings from Montreal. I'm jealous of your weather. Love California. Good place. Got a lot of family in Altadena. How useful are web application frameworks? How do I know which framework would suit me? They're very useful. I recommend you use them. Number one. Number two, what's good for you depends on the type of work that you're doing. So you're going to have to explore this. Drum lessons in StudioWeb, fundamentals in rudiments and four-way coordination. I suppose I could do some, but there's plenty of drum lessons on YouTube, you know. What I'm trying to do with StudioWeb, people ask me all the time, can you do a video on this framework or that framework or this library or that library or this language? I could. I could probably sell a lot more courses if I did that, but I don't think that would be good for you guys. Simply because there's already a lot of stuff out there. Once you've done my fundamental training, then even the worst of the worst tutorials will be very approachable for you, because you understand what's going on, generally speaking. In terms of drumming, I don't know. My drumming skills are not close to my coding skills. I'm an amateur drummer. I'm a professional developer. But with drumming, the most important thing is timing. You got to work on your timing, and 4, 8, 16, off pattern, and then you have to learn to hit with different forces, different hand positions, and you got to, one thing is just make sure your feet movement are independent of your hand movements, so that it's not like you're not hitting at the same time. It's got to be, not gonna be like this. It's gonna be. It creates a sense of fullness in the drumming. Those are my drumming tips. Greetings from Venezuela. How are we doing for time here? 19 minutes. Okay, we'll be closing up soon. That's an interesting one. My instinct would be to go .NET or Java, but who knows? Stefan, do you plan to create more online courses? I'm actually working on a new one as we speak, and this is what it's called. It's called The Lizard Wizard. Yes, it is a course that's going to give you a detailed understanding of the operating system of your brain, and which will help you to learn more quickly, will help you to become a better developer, help you to land better jobs, how to get higher salaries, how to start a business. It'll help you in all different aspects of your life. It's incredible. So Lizard Wizard, that is what I'm working on now. It's arguably my best course. It's going to arguably be my most important course. So that's what I'm working on. That's the course. What do I need to know about web security as a web dev? You got to know your basics. You got to know, HTTPS. You got to understand how to filter, SQL attacks. Again, very simple. You just implement a function or a method to scrub the SQL. Stuff like that. Simple things. There's simple strategies you can use to obfuscate what you're doing. You don't have to become a major expert. Just know how to lock down stuff. I'm actually interested in learning Vue and Fast API. Well, then do it. Why not? Hello from Ukraine. That's where my family comes from. Do you ever plan visiting Ukraine or starting a web studio in Ukraine, because some U.S. companies are opening their web studios here? No, no plans. I don't. StudioWeb is not a web design studio anymore. It used to be, but now it's an educational platform. I should visit Ukraine at some point. I have extended family there, actually. So I'm told, in Kiev. Has anyone here tried? I got to read this. Hold on. Has anyone here tried Code Romantic Game for learning programming? Code Romantic Game. Well, I once built a online dating service to learn Java a bit better, to dive deeper into Java. That was years ago. Yeah. I'm currently a JMeter tester, 44 years of age. Shall I focus on Groovy Grails or learn PHP? Depends on what you want to do. You probably find, depending on where you live, there's a lot of demand for PHP developers in the freelance space because it's small business. I don't think you find too many freelance Groovy Grails jobs. I think Groovy Grails you're looking at working for some companies, but that's not a very popular stack as far as I understand. Technology. All right, how are we doing for time here? Okay, I'm trying to keep these a little bit shorter. Hamza, I'm developing an interest in psychology. I'd be happy to have some tips, recommendation books, etc. for a starter. I remember this is what you studied. Yeah, I'll do that. In the Lizard Wizard course, which you're going to start seeing video samples come out soon, I'll be talking about some of the sources. And the big ones out there, Robert Cialdini, Daniel Kahneman, several others. But those are the two big ones these days. There's several others, a lot of studies. I'm going to put it all together based on what I picked up over the last few decades. Can't believe it's three decades. I first started studying psychology on a superficial level in my teens, late teens, for various reasons, which I'll get into in the course. And then I got into it in college. I took some psychology courses, and then university was my major. Rob always knows best. Yeah. Give me some thumbs up, guys. Hello from New York. It's Saturday night. How are you doing? I hope everything's good. Matthew, how do you decide how to pair a front-end framework with a back-end? That's a good question. I couldn't say. I think when I chose Vue, which was, I looked at Angular, Vue, and React. I chose Vue, and because I liked it, I like its simplicity and so forth. And just by circumstances, I found out that Laravel uses Vue as well. So I said, hey, fantastic, it's all there anyway. I don't have to install it. When is it not time to use a web framework? Well, I discussed that. I gave you 3 things. You can watch at the beginning of this video. What do you think of Symfony? I have not used Symfony, so I don't have a direct opinion. All I know is that Laravel is the predominant framework in the world. Oh yeah, Bitcoin. Look at this. My friend sent me these. Silver Bitcoins. Silver Bitcoins. I also got a a silver Litecoin. And I even got a silver Ethereum coin. I don't know if you can see this or not. Anyway. Yeah, big moves in the Bitcoins, eh? A Hunsick. Oh, there you go. Loco. There we go. Can you tell us in short word about testing, unit testing? I moved to Vue 3 months ago and know nothing about it. How important is it? I say unit testing is important once you have an established code base. I don't like implementing unit tests when you're still working on the version 1 because you don't know what the end use case is going to be. You're going to be rewriting a lot of your base classes, and which means you have to rewrite a lot of unit tests, which is a big pain in the butt. Once you have a solid code base where a certain aspect of your code base hasn't changed, it's not going to change for a while, and you know it's cool and the functionality is set and the use cases are set, then you start implementing unit tests. More people involved, more unit tests become important. Thoughts on W3C framework versus Bootstrap? I have not used W3C framework, but when it comes to front end, I would just use, instead of using the Bootstrap grid for layout, I would be using CSS, raw CSS, Flexbox, and grid. There you go. Are Bitcoins good? I bought some 10 years ago. Well, 10 years ago. How many did you buy? 10 years ago, they were worth 5 cents a piece. You know? You might be rich. What are they now? 16,000 US a piece? All right. 26 minutes in. Yeah. That's very funny. Don't send them your Bitcoins. All right. I think that's it, guys. We are good for now. No other questions. I hope you enjoyed the stream. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, I want 2 thumbs down. Show how bad I am. And I will see you guys. Yes, I'm making a new one. It's called the Lizard Wizard. Lizard Wizard. It's going to be, I think, the most important course I've ever put out. And I've been putting out courses for a long, long time. 100. If you bought 100 Bitcoins, what's that? It's worth like 160,000 US. Pretty good. You might want to sell. All right, guys, have a good night. I hope everything is well. How long time it takes to learn a framework like Laravel? You can learn it all within a week, the basics, and get up and running, if not sooner. It'll take you a month or so to get comfortable with it. All right, guys, give me some thumbs up, and we shall talk later. You know what? I'll give you my ASMR ship here.